Welcome to another episode of War Hero to Superhero, helping military, veterans, and first responders transform their lives from the bedroom to the boardroom. I am one of your hosts, Daniel Faust. You know, freedom. Again, when you take off this mask and you get home, you feel free. And this week this month, we're focusing on taking off the mask in a different way. COVID has brought us new practices into our lives, as we discussed yesterday. The sad part is that we're wearing a mask. Doesn't matter if it's this one, which is pixelating, or even this one. It doesn't matter. We've been wearing some type of mask before COVID. And this month's theme, even before COVID started, we planned this out months in advance, was to take off the mask. What we're going to discuss is that the masks that we wear, what places we put them on, and how to take them off so we're free. So again, we're focusing this week in the bedroom, because if you're not taking off the mask in the bedroom, they're even saying, some people that are not intimate partners, to wear this mask while having intimacy. Well, we hope that you're married so you don't have to wear it physically, but definitely mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, you want to go over and to get out of the mess and to take off the mask, no matter what color it is. We talked about yesterday that the mask that we're talking about is not the physical one that you're wearing. It's the one in relationship that you're wearing, which is a defense mechanism, which we do to avoid pain. So we're going to dive into what each mask looks like more in depth, especially in the bedroom, because if you don't know what it goes over and looks like, now when you're wearing your physical mask, you know what they look like. They're all different colors or different shades and whatnot, but the thing is, they operate differently. This one actually has a filter, so it's going to function differently than this little one that's cosmetic for my wife, and this one for the kids to be fun. So definitely we want to focus on those three masks. And hopefully if you watched yesterday's episode, you'll know what we're talking about. And if you haven't, go back to yesterday's episode. No matter if you're watching it on the Easy Way Wall, on Facebook, on YouTube, even on Twitch, no matter where it's at, go over and watch. So our first one is talking about the Just Fine mask. We talked about it yesterday briefly about how are you doing? Just fine. But what does that look like in a bedroom situation? I really had to extrapolate today. I was going out to the orchards with my kids and writing down some stuff, and went to go research a little bit more on the True Face website, which is a great resource to go over and to learn about this. But what does it look like when a husband or a wife wears the Just Fine mask? Well, what it looks like, at least from my perspective, is everything looks good from the outside. Because if you go over and you're saying that you're just fine, you usually can put it on pretty fixed. You're smiling, everything's going over and fantastic, but that's what it looks like from the outside, even from the spouse. I was just recently watching the Red Table. It's a Facebook show that goes over now, has Gloria Estefan and I guess different family members and whatnot, and they were talking about surviving divorce. And her husband looked like he had the Just Fine episode and Fine mask on pretty much the entire time until about a couple years in, and then it all over and exploded. So everything looked good from the outside. She thought she had a great marriage, 25 years in, and boom, gone in a heartbeat 2 weeks later. So everything looked fine from the outside, but also with this mask is that the answers are superficial, it's vague, usually it's passing ships, so you don't go over and see it as much, and you're just going over and but you really don't get the depth and the meaning with the Just Fine person. The Just Fine person in the marriage usually can be superficial. As going along, their emotions are apparent. What's inside is apparent. Like when you start getting to know them, the emotions are apparent, but they won't display or talk about their feelings. They won't go and express them. They typically, you might see it in a moment when they take off the mask and you see the crack in their face. You see the eyes wince. You go over and see this to go, real quick. It's nothing there, but the feelings, the emotions are apparent. What they're going over and expressing. And again, it's minute. When they take off that mask, it's apparent. But their feelings are typically not expressed in there. And especially when you dive into intimacy and you want to get to know their feelings, you want to know where their heart is, you want to know where their motive is, you really want to know the real person. For them with the Just Fine mask, They want to stay in the just fine because they don't know any difference. And for diving into intimacy is difficult, asking them about that. So that's what basically the just fine mask looks like in that regard. Now we go into the second type of mask, a new technique mask, which would be more like this mask. So this would be the just fine mask. This would probably be the new technique mask because this mask has a new technique for going over and filtering. If you look inside it in here, there's a little filter hole in there, and then it goes over and filters the air. The same thing happens with the person in the new technique mask. For them, they admit it. Just like this mask, you obviously know that it's needed. You go over and see there's a filter. Things aren't working. Like that person that's wearing the mask goes over and knows things ain't working. They're not just fine. They're not going to play a facade. They're not going to do platitudes. They're not going to do common courtesies. They're not going to be like prim and proper and like all the time. They're going to tell you, like, for myself, I usually am in the new technique mask. That's one that I've been learning to take off over the years. And I just be like, how's your day? It sucks, or it's great, or it's in between. They would be honest about where they sit at. For them, though, when they get into the marriage piece, they're researching new ways to spice things up, trying to better connect in intimacy and in sex and communication and schedule and everything else. They're trying to always go over and try to shore up the grade because they know there's something inherently wrong, and if they find the right technique. So you'll see them going over and trying new ideas, looking for sex tips, going to classes, reading a lot, listening to podcasts, those types of things. They will be going over and looking for that when they're wearing the mask, just like this one. You go over and it's like the most upgraded, fancy, different version of that. And from there, but what they're doing is that why they're trying the new ideas and looking for the sex tips and going to the classes and read and listen to the podcast, because in hope, something will fix the brokenness. They feel inherently that if I read this right book, if I do this particular technique, I go over and learn how to cook, I go over and learn how to be a better husband, better wife, and I do the check blocks and everything else, those particular techniques, or a kabuki's mass of techniques and whatnot, they'll go over and say, I will either find a concoction or find a specific way to go over and thrive if I do that one thing, or if I do these set things. If I listen to these podcasts, go over and do yoga, go over and work out, and do all these things, and start really doing the check blocks of serving my wife, then I'll go over and thrive, or serve my husband, I'll go over and thrive. Because they know there's something inherently broken. They're honest about it. So that's that mask. The last one is the pedigree mask. The pedigree mask looks at life completely different in marriage. For them, when they're wearing the mask, actually, they make you the subject of marriage. Realize I have a correction. That they make you the subject of marriage instead of them going over and saying it's just fine, and then you hope to fizzle off, or the person that goes over and has a new technique, they're figuring it out and they're going to go shore everything up, and marriage is going to work better because of what they fixed, because they see the inherent brokenness. They see you either in that new technique mask or in the just fine mask, and they're going to go fix you, because for them, they're always wanting to help you, to fix you, ready to pray for you, meditate, find you the right class, find you the right podcast, anything else. They're quote unquote like the subject matter expert in this particular regard. They think that they are all set. Done a couple grammatical errors today. Nothing wrong with them, but secretly they're seriously hurting. Because the people that go over and try to fix other people, truly, and you can usually tell pedigree mask because it's overzealous. Like you start talking to them, and then if you're the person with the new technique and you're like, yeah, I need this in my marriage, and all right, my husband or my wife is going over and listening to me and trying to help me out. But when you try to go share that intimacy, that transparent, vulnerable moment, and you're hoping it reciprocates back, they don't, because they think they all got it together. But when push comes to shove, those are the people that really are more broken in that particular regard. So I want to share my story so to quantify this entire thing on how a mask hurts the one that you love. So for me, my wife was the Just Fine mask. We'll just call this the Just Fine mask, and I was the New Technique mask over here. Really never pedigree. So when we went over and got married, it was like, all right, thought she was the most awesome person it could be and everything else. And what happened was is that Just Fine and New Technique kept going over and coming together. And over time, it just didn't go over and work. I didn't really connect with Just Fine because I knew it wasn't Just Fine. And for me, I was always trying to fix myself. And then sometimes I would dawn on the pedigree mask because I would go over, and as I was learning these new techniques, I would then try to go put them on. And what I found out was is that when you force a Just Fine mask that's not ready to go over and talk, and the new technique person's always looking for something new, there's not trust going over and built in the marriage because you're both not intimate, you're both not vulnerable, you're both wearing masks. And then for me, I'm going over and grabbing this third mask occasionally, going over and saying like, I should go over and switch. I should find that technique. And then as I do it, then I'm going to go over and put that over on the other mask and say, hey, two masks are better than one, right? And what I go over and did is I did that for roughly about 7 years. And what happened was is that all my techniques ran out. Me going over and trying to take her Just Fine mask and try to put pedigree over it while I was using all the techniques and put all these masks on, it just doesn't work. You know, you could wear one mask, you could wear 3 masks, you could wear 10,000 masks. The thing is no matter how thick it is, it's like it only does so much in that particular regard. So for this particular thing with COVID, yes, wearing a mask is important, but in your marriage, you were never intended to wear a mask. We as humans were never really intended to wear a mask, but masks are supposed to be short-term, short-lived things. Now, when you're dating and everything else, you don't know the person, so you might put on the mask to make sure for safety and security. But when it comes to a marriage and intimacy, and as years go over and grow, you should be ripping off these masks on a regular basis. So for me, what I had to go over and do is my wife's Just Fine mask got ripped off and found out she wasn't fine. It wasn't fine for a long time. And then for me, trying to go over and put on new masks for her really challenged me because I got spiritually kicked in the nuts and had to really realize I'm like, I need to go over and take off my mask before even going over and being a conduit to have the person realize they're wearing a mask and then be loving and gracious to go over and allow them to take off their mask. Because when we force to put a mask on somebody, when they're not ready for it, guess what's going to happen? They're going to go fight. If we go over and we rip off the mask, we could be taking the oxygen that they're not ready to go over and have. So we can't be ripping it off. We can't be forcing other masks to go on. It just brings more hurt in that regard. So we need to go over, and we're going to talk about this more tomorrow on how to deal with it, because there's going to be guilt and there's going to be shame. And in this particular regard, that's the reason why we usually put on a mask, is because of that. And the long story short is that we need to go over and understand what mask that we're wearing and deal with our own mask instead of going over and taking our mask, and if we take it off, to rip off somebody else's or to give them a new one. It just doesn't go over and work. If you want to go learn more about this topic, I'd highly recommend you go to trueface.org for blogs, books, and more. I think they have a new book called Two Roads. John Lynch will be tagged in this post on the Facebook side just to go over. So if there is a wrong link, get directly back with him. He also does John Lynch Speaks. So if you're looking for speaking on grace and truth from this perspective, definitely he does Facebook Lives, I think on Fridays, and then he can also be for hire, virtual. So I'd highly recommend to go over and learn this, because our superhero challenge for you today is to take time to know which type of mask you're wearing. If you don't understand what mask you're wearing, you don't realize the facade you might be living in your bedroom. And as we go expand from bedroom to living room next week and eventually boardroom, the mask that we wear at home It's just more tightly fixed when we get into the living room and boardroom. So if we can't take it off in the most intimate place, it's going to be even harder to take it off in the other place. So no more going over and fixing the boardroom. Start it from the bedroom and fix it to the boardroom. And we'd love for you to, if you have any questions, please go over and join the conversation. This is always a dialogue, never a monologue. So if you're watching this on Pedopolo or watching this on Facebook or on YouTube or Twitch, we would love you to be engaged on the live or on the replay. And we'd love for you to go put the tags in the live and in the replay. So that's pretty much it for today. These messages are kind of short because we want you to absorb the impact. And if you're struggling in the bedroom and you're going over and you have a mask and it's a tightly fixed and you don't even know that you have one, we'd love to hear from you. Every veteran gets 20 minutes free contacting us. Facebook is the most prominent place to contact, but you can connect with us on any platform and we'll get you our information. And if you want to start your marriage superhero journey, we'd love for you to join on patreon.com, Thrive Not Survive, to go over and start that journey as low as $5 a month. So I want to thank you for going over and joining. We'd love to go over and hear from you. People are already answering. Cool. And we hope to go over and hear from you soon because this is always a dialogue, never a monologue. And again, I want to thank you for joining and see you tomorrow, dealing more with what causes us to put on the mask first and how do we deal with the hurt and how do we deal with the shame. All right. Thanks. Have a good day.